Hey guys, welcome back. So, if you've got your blanket, your tea, or maybe you're just staring into the void waiting for sleep to arrive, tonight's little journey takes us back to ancient Rome. And not to the grand marble forums or bloody gladiator fights, but to sweat. Yes, the Romans were deeply invested in bodily fluids. Not just in using them, but in collecting them, which, as you can probably imagine, is about as glamorous as it sounds. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely, they weren't out there with little clay jars trying to bottle gladiator armpit juice. But spoiler alert, that is exactly what they did. Because in Rome, sweat was not just sweat. It was a medical cure, a beauty product, and even a charm. Somewhere between a potion and a moisturizer, with a dash of superstition thrown in. Let's set the scene. Ancient Rome, somewhere in the 1st or 2nd century CE. You're walking through a Roman bathhouse. Steam rising, marble floors slippery. The sound of men discussing politics and debts echoing off the vaulted ceilings. And in the corner, a sweaty gladiator, fresh from the arena, probably covered in both glory and less appealing substances. Enter the eager Roman fan who believes that scraping off a bit of that gladiator's perspiration will basically work like Advil, Botox, and maybe a love potion all rolled into one. Because Romans really did think that gladiator sweat was medicinal. And not in a vague, oh, it'll perk you up kind of way. No, they genuinely believed it cured epilepsy. Yes, epilepsy. If you had seizures, the answer was apparently not a trained physician, but a small jar of athlete drippings applied, or in some cases swallowed. Because of course, why not double down? Now, to give the Romans some credit, their medical system was not completely off the rails. They had doctors, hospitals, surgical tools that looked suspiciously modern. But alongside scalpels and stitches, they also had this delightful mix of magical thinking. And gladiators, with their muscled bodies and heroic aura, became walking medicine cabinets. Their sweat, their blood, even the scrapings from their skin were believed to contain powerful life forces. Think of it like the ancient equivalent of overpriced celebrity skincare serums, except instead of Jennifer Lopez's secret olive oil formula, you've got Marcus the Gladiator's elbow grease. Pliny the Elder, Rome's favorite encyclopedic oversharer, even wrote about it. He casually noted that gladiator sweat mixed with oil was sold as a cosmetic. Roman women supposedly dabbed it on their faces, believing it would make them radiant. Imagine Sephora, but with clay pots full of dried sweat flakes on the shelf. New from House of Caesar, Gladiator Glow, only 20 denarii. And before you think it was only eccentric nobles, nope. This was a real mini-industry. Gladiators themselves, or more likely their handlers, sold scrapings from their bodies to adoring fans. After all, if you've survived being stabbed in the arena, you might as well monetize your pores. A little extra income never hurt, especially when your day job involves dodging tridents. Now, was it effective? No, unless you count effective as spreading bacteria and causing mild infections. But Romans weren't exactly doing double-blind medical trials. If someone's cousin's aunt's neighbor said their epilepsy improved after rubbing on gladiator sweat, then, congratulations, it was officially medicine. Let's float gently from sweat into the broader Roman obsession with bodily substances. Because this wasn't just a gladiator thing. Romans thought saliva, earwax, and, brace yourself, urine had all sorts of therapeutic properties. Sweat just happened to be the deluxe edition, especially when sourced from Rome's celebrity athletes. And since Romans loved to tie status to everything, owning a little vial of gladiator sweat was like saying, yes, I care about my health and I have good taste in warriors. So as you tuck yourself in tonight, remember, if you were in ancient Rome, your nightstand might not have had chamomile tea or lavender oil. Instead, you could have reached over for a jar labeled Gladiator Perspiration, extra strength. Sweet dreams, indeed. So, we've established that gladiator sweat was basically the Starbucks pumpkin spice latte of Roman medicine. Trendy, overhyped, and weirdly expensive for what it actually was. But sweat wasn't the only thing in this bodily fluid catalog. Let's linger a little longer on why Romans thought it mattered so much. Part of the answer lies in their whole idea of vital essences. Romans, borrowing heavily from the Greeks, because originality was never their strongest suit, believed that the body was full of special fluids that kept you alive. They called it the humor theory. Blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Balance those and you were golden. Disturb them, and suddenly you're sick, cranky, or possessed by demons. And since gladiators were the ultimate physical specimens, well-fed, muscular, practically glowing with testosterone and olive oil, their fluids were thought to be, let's say, premium grade. In other words, if you're going to smear sweat on your face, it may as well be from the guy who just split another man's helmet in two. It was inspired sweat, charged with energy, bravery, and raw virility. Who wouldn't want that rubbed into their pores? Now, this wasn't just men being weird about men. Roman women leaned into it too. According to several accounts, wealthy ladies were particularly fond of using gladiator sweat as a cosmetic. Imagine them sitting in their atriums, servants fanning them, while they dabbed their cheeks with what was essentially eau de locker room. Supposedly, it made them more beautiful and more desirable. Though, let's be honest, their husbands were probably just pretending not to notice the faint scent of arena mixed with rose oil. And it wasn't just sweat. Gladiator blood was also considered a cure, especially for epilepsy again. The logic was the same. Drink the life force of the strong, and maybe it'll fix whatever's wrong inside you. So, yes, during games, some spectators were known to rush into the arena after a fallen gladiator's death and dip their handkerchiefs or cups in his blood. Romantic, right? A little less date night, a little more unhygienic crime scene. It's easy to laugh at all this now, but it's worth remembering. Rome was a place without antibiotics, without proper neurology, without any real understanding of germs. Illness was terrifying and mysterious. Epilepsy, in particular, was deeply stigmatized and frightening. So if someone said, "Here, rub on some of Maximus's sweat, it'll help," you'd probably be willing to try, especially if the alternative was just waiting around to have another seizure in front of your neighbors. And of course, there's the status factor again. Owning these strange remedies wasn't just about health. It was about showing that you had connections, access, and wealth. Ordinary Romans couldn't exactly stroll up to a gladiator and ask him to drip into a vial. But if you were rich, you could have it delivered like fine wine. Medicine, but make it exclusive. Now, to glide a little further, this obsession with gladiator sweat is part of a larger Roman fascination with turning the body into medicine. They weren't shy about it. Animal parts, herbs, minerals, random concoctions, all fair game. A doctor might recommend mixing poppy juice with vinegar, or applying crushed beetles to your forehead. Compared to that, gladiator sweat almost sounds normal. Almost. So next time someone tells you the Romans were ahead of their time, building aqueducts and inventing concrete, just remember they were also busy bottling human perspiration like it was the next wonder drug. Civilization is complicated like that. Let's drift now to the bigger picture. What this tells us about Roman culture. On one hand, you have this incredible empire that could field armies, conquer continents, and build massive bathhouses. On the other, you have people eagerly buying jars of gladiator sweat at what I can only assume was an ancient version of a street market. Rome contained multitudes, brilliant, bizarre, and more than a little gross. And yet, if you squint, you can see echoes of this even today. Think of modern obsessions with superfoods, exotic supplements, or celebrity-endorsed beauty routines that promise to reverse aging. The ingredients may have changed, fewer body fluids involved, thankfully, but the marketing strategy is the same. If it comes from someone admired, powerful, or glamorous, it must be good for you. So, as we close the lid on this story, maybe the Romans weren't so alien after all. They just happened to pick a rather sweatier path to wellness. And perhaps that's oddly comforting. Because if humans 2,000 years ago were already falling for overpriced, questionable cures, well, at least we're consistent as a species. So with that thought, let's exhale slowly. Let the strange image of a Roman matron dabbing gladiator sweat on her face drift away and settle into the quiet of the night. Sweet dreams, and remember, history is always weirder, stickier, and a lot more human than the marble statues would have you believe.